Good morning, everybody. At Targeted Justice, we have been receiving growing complaints about targeted individuals whose children have been targeted as well. Children as young as 3 talk about bad guys talking to them in their heads or hearing monsters in the attic. Those that have turned 10 to 12 acknowledge that they have been hearing voices since they can remember. They sometimes engage in appropriate conduct for their age, stating that the voices told them to do so. The microwave auditory effect, also known as voice to skull, is a patented torture method that the United States Armed Forces has admitted deploying in armed conflicts. In Operation Desert Storm, the United States acknowledged its quick success was partly due to the fact that they broadcasted voices to the enemy's combatants that said, "Allah is asking you to put down your weapons." Worried about the long-term, potentially irreversible damage to the children's developing brains, I decided to ask one of the most renowned experts on the topic, Dr. Len Baer. As a medical doctor who was the first civilian diagnosed with non-kinetic brain injury, also known as Havana Syndrome, I wanted to hear Dr. Baer's opinion on the effect of V2K on children. Good morning, Len. Thank you for sacrificing yourself and in the midst of the pain that you are being undergoing, agreeing to answer the questions that we have been meaning to ask for a long time.
It's my pleasure, Anna. I know we've been postponing it, and finally we're doing it. So, no matter what, no matter what obstacles we have, we will be here when we can, and right now we can. So let's get to the topics.
Thank you.
Topics you chose is extremely important.
Thank you. I know everybody out there is so appreciative of your effort. Well, the first thing we want to know is, what is the cause of non-kinetic brain injury, which a lot of people still refer to as Havana Syndrome, but that's a misnomer. So can you please explain what is the cause of it?
Sure. Non-kinetic brain injury is a relatively new term and relatively new diagnosis. Kinetic means moving. So in case of concussion, there's a moving object. Something hit the head or the head hits concrete. Anyway, there are objects, there are macro objects that damage your brain. In case of NKBI, in case of non-kinetic brain injury, there are no moving objects that damages brain on impact. What moves is the energy that injures the brain.
Does this mean that this condition, and NKBI, is only caused by microwave pulsations to the brain?
Well, there are many hypotheses. They looked at ultrasound, they looked at infrared, they looked at a combination of various forms of energy, but the consensus of 2 most comprehensive panels, one was by the National Academy of Science in 2020, and the other one was 2022 Intelligence Committee report on anomalous health incidents, or AHI, and that was, both committees agreed that the most plausible hypothesis of what causes NKBI is a directed pulsed microwave energy. So this is the hypothesis that has never been falsified. And so until it's falsified, it's the hypothesis that we're working with.
So how is the microwave auditory effect, also, commonly colloquially known as V2K, voice to skull, how is it produced?
Well, it's also produced by microwaves, but the microwaves are modulated or pulsed in a certain wave, in a certain wave, in a certain way that is recognized by the auditory nerve. So it passes the regular uh, wave sound. It's not auditory. It doesn't go through your inner ear. It goes directly to the auditory nerve that would carry the information from the ear. And so it is customized to the target. And that's why nobody around you can hear the same things. So it's customized waves. They pulsed in a certain way, and um, it produces so-called microwave hearing or microwave fray effect that you mentioned before. So that's the difference. Microwave radio frequency waves in the microwave microwave range can be used to damage your brain, and it's called neurostrike, and it produces NKBI, or can be used in a different format, different frequency, different pulsation to produce strictly auditory effect known as V2K. So same type of energy, different applications.
Do we know where these pulsations that cause the V2K come from?
Well, the most likely sources include cell towers, drones, satellites, possibly HAARP, which is called HAARP stands for High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. Those are um, uh, 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer array antennas that can produce a signal of basically any frequency, and then it um, bounces off the ionosphere, which has a concave um, configuration. So it's like the eye in a sky. It can recognize very um, high definition um, what's happening on the ground. So it can recognize your brain fingerprint. It can recognize other biometrics, but the effect is um, V2K is produced by different methodologies, but the effect is the same. It's a pulse microwave modulated to be perceived as a sound.
So for anyone that hasn't experienced V2K like myself ever, this torture tactic, can you briefly describe how it, to the best of your abilities, how it feels like?
What it feels like is that you are never alone. You never get a silent time. Right now we're talking and I don't have V2K, the conversation stops and V2K appears. So there's remote neural monitoring. It's a real time process, and it speech occupies a certain um, space, certain window in your brain. And um, if you're listening to V2K, then this is what brain receives as an audio signal. If I play speech in my headphones, and I'm tuning in onto that speech, then I am occupying the place where V2K otherwise would be occupying. And so that's my personal way to ignore it, because we have to learn to ignore it. There's nothing good about engaging with V2K, engaging with the content of V2K, and it always has some emotional component. So the voices can be, it's someone that you know, someone, or it can be someone it's a total stranger. And as far as the content, um, the most common scripts of V2K are designed to bring you down and make you feel miserable. Um, and for example, your dead father can speak to you because they got a sample of his voice, and then it's very hard. It's very hard. Just a second. Sorry. Phone. It's very hard to ignore a sound of the voice of your father, even though he's dead. So and it would comment on everything you're doing at the moment. So the connection is in real time. There's no delay. You literally you look at something, you thought of something, and there's immediate reaction by V2K. So it's a non-stop voices that want to distract you from whatever you are doing.
Wow. Well, since I can't imagine, I cannot imagine what that causes to a child that is trying to pay attention to a teacher. Eh, but that's a discussion for another day. So since V2K is caused by microwave pulses, does this mean that V2K can also contribute to non-kinetic brain injury in a person?
It is possible. Both are microwaves. Obviously, neurostrike would be a much higher energy because uh, I can tell you what neurostrike looks like in my case. I stop, I start moaning and screaming, then I lose not lose conscious. I lose ability to speak. I lose ability to balance. The organs of gravity are absolutely off, and it just can last between 15 minutes and an hour and a half, and it comes in waves, and and it's extremely painful. So the very high energy, there's no way to shield from it, and then after that, you feel like you enter kind of post-concussive state. It's not a concussion; it's a non-kinetic brain injury. Nevertheless, you are all you want to do is lie down and stare in the abyss. In that state, even thinking about something is painful. Like this is for the first time I experienced that thinking about something can be painful. So that's your NKBI, that's your neurostrike that causes NKBI. Now, microwave auditory effect is actually one of the most studied effects on humans. The work was pioneered by Alan Frey. Uh, the effect was called the Frey effect. Professor James Lynn from the University of Chicago contributed. Vocalization, the ability to produce voices, has been known in the published literature since 1975, describing experiments that were done at Walter Reed in 1974. And then lately, Dr. Ken Foster from the University of Pennsylvania showed that in order to have a reliable communication in V2K, you have to go to the level that to the level of radio frequency exposure that substitute damage to the brain. So his conclusion was, you know what, V2K works, but in order to use V2K, you will produce brain damage to the brain. Therefore, nobody will use V2K as a method of communication. As we know, that is not the um, this is not the goal of targeting program. So brain damage is met with open arms. So
So in that sense, he basically said, yeah, it'd be really good to send them immediate messages, but it's going to cause brain damage. So the balance of between the benefit and the cons and the pros, well, clearly it was not worth it because they don't want to perpetrate brain damage to their own soldiers, right? But they don't care doing it to targeted individuals and children.
that's true. So yeah, the from the damage from neurostrike, you can even have permanent damage even from a single neurostrike. That's how powerful that energy is. From the V2K, even though the damage might be milder, but if you do it every day, we think that it would have a cumulative effect and would contribute to the brain damage. So just two different application of energy in the same range with different effects. Very harsh from your strike and mild but cumulative from V2K.
Okay, so going back to children and children hearing voices, can we rule out schizophrenia in children as the reason, the cause for these children to be hearing voices?
Well, that's a loaded question. But first of all, schizophrenia, that's the easiest because unless you undergone puberty, schizophrenia is not going to manifest itself. So uh,
Why?
it, unless you reach puberty, the schizophrenia is not going to manifest itself. So from after puberty to late 20s, this is when schizophrenia manifests. Then the regular statistics tell us that between 3 and 10% of healthy children would hear voices. Um, they would play with their toys. Um, they would have, um, imaginary friends, or just inflated imagination. So this is a challenge to uh, um, children's psychiatrists. When you have this kind of symptomology, it is your obligation to differentiate between normal voices and voices, voices that are part of development process and voices um, projected onto the child's brain. And it's not an easy task. But if your psychiatrist is not even aware of V2K and does not want to be educated in about V2K, fire the doctor and go to the next one, because he's um what did I
It's
say?
negligence. It's
Uh,
to me, it's reckless negligence for a doctor not to be up to date with
that's
the
true. That's
technology.
that's true. And then if they end up diagnosing a child with a psychiatric disorder, they give them psychiatric medicine, and that definitely produce a harm. So doctors, remember your oath. Do no harm. And in order to do no harm, you have to differentiate. It is your responsibility. You cannot just say, you know, this is what it is, and V2K is not even on my menu of on my differential menu. So, um,
In fact, let me ask you this, if you know,
yeah,
I gather, I don't think it's in the DSM-5, V2K as like a part of any diagnosis, right?
no, not as far as I know. A V2K is a term developed by the armed forces. It was on their website. Then the website was um, uh, um, then the term was deleted. It was scraped clean from the term. But internet is forever. So we have versions of the internet going back to earlier times. And it is a government technology, V2K. We didn't come up with this term. The US Armed Forces came up with this term.
Well, I look forward to doing a deep dive on V2K in a next opportunity to do so, because I think that your knowledge and your expertise can be of so much use to so many people that at least our internal surveys say that at least 62% of targeted individuals are attacked with V2K. So your wisdom in this realm, I think, would be really great. I want to ask you, in your opinion, what could be the long-term effects of V2K exposure on, say, an 11-year-old that recognizes, in hindsight, I've been hearing the same voices since I'm 3, but since a child is already 11, well, they know they're not natural to, it's not just overactive imagination. Instead, it's just voices foreign to his or her person. What would those long-term effects of being subjected to microwave pulses for the V2K in the course of in a developing brain could mean?
I can only imagine what the long-term effects are, because there are no studies investigating cumulative effect of children who have been exposed to V2K for such a long time. But the common sense dictate that um, um, just a second. But the common sense dictates that the effect on the developing brain is no less than devastating, and long-term effects are serious, cannot be simply shrugged off, and this is a public health issue. This is an issue for a psychiatrist. This is an issue for everybody. Um, you need to work with physicists, you need to work with IT specialists, but ultimately the question is to a child psychiatrist. And because it's a public issue, then the fact that this is happening to our children must be elevated to the utmost priority. And unfortunately, this is not the topic that the FDA, NIH, or CDC are concerned about. Unfortunately, these agencies have been shown their incompetence time after time. So it is up to us to do the hard work and recruit more medical professionals to do their duty and protect our children.
Well, I have to say, I don't think it's incompetence. I really believe it's collusion with the perpetrators of these horrible crimes against humanity, and particularly against children and even grandmothers. that are victims of this torture tactic known as V2K. So thank you so much. Do you have any closing remarks before we say goodbye for now?
Yeah, I do. If you have V2K, if you can, please do not engage with it. I understand it's hard, especially for children. V2K is also used as a way to synchronize with your brain, to entrain with your brain, and establish a bridge with your cognitive process to do other nefarious things. I can imagine how hard it must be to explain this concept to a 4-year-old, but please try. And my heart goes out to the children and especially to their parents who feel helpless that they can't protect their sons and daughters who are trying to learn things, go to school, live their normal life. And so we have to pledge to continue our fight and bring resolution to this inhumane situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bear, for your priceless contributions and leadership in ending the torture against innocent Americans and civilians around the world. The show notes will have references to the studies that Dr. Bear made a reference to. And for those of you listening, first of all, thank you for listening in, and please help us save our children. Share this content with everyone you can, particularly those organizations dedicated to protecting children. Call Congress and demand that they defund the criminal special access program known as a targeted individual program. We're counting on you to put an end to these atrocious crimes against humanity. Thank you.